Blood splashed across Dr. Alex Riven's medical scanner as he ran down the dimly lit service corridor of Station Pither. In his arms, a strange, twitching creature with silver fur streaked with glowing teal patches struggled for breath. Its condition was dire, the blood matting its otherwise pristine fur. "Stay with me," Alex murmured, his voice calm despite his racing heart. "Whatever you are, I won't let you fade today." The creature's claws wrapped tightly around his arm, not in a panic of pain, but with the grasp of something intent, almost as if it was trying to communicate. The elevator gave a groan as it slowly descended to Deck 4, and Alex counted each passing second. His uniform was soaked with blood, and he could feel the weight of time pressing down on him. Every minute mattered when you were trying to save a life. But this was unlike anything he had encountered in his years as a vet on Station Pither. He had found the creature near docking port 12, abandoned and near death. The injuries, precise and surgical, suggested someone had used a military-grade particle weapon. Whoever had done this had intentionally sought to end the life of this magnificent being. The elevator doors opened with a soft hiss, and Alex hurried down the hall toward his clinic, a tiny, forgotten space tucked away between storage units and maintenance shafts. The design of Station Pither made it clear that veterinary care was low on the list of priorities. "Welcome back, Dr. Riven," chirped the automated assistant as the door to his clinic slid open. "You're bleeding on my sanitized floor." "Override! Authorization Riven Alpha 7, Alex commanded, carefully lowering the creature onto his examination table. Full xenobiological scan, highest priority. The overhead lights flickered to life, bathing the creature in a soft, blue glow as the medical scanner whirred. Alex worked quickly, applying pressure to the most severe wounds, but a growing sense of unease was settling over him. The creature's anatomy was unlike anything he'd seen before. Species unknown, possible variant. The system announced after a moment, followed by a pause. 80% probability of relation to the Altherus species. Alex froze mid-action. That wasn't possible. The Altherus were a sentient, feline-like species from the Drosa system, known for their aristocratic society and intense hostility toward humans. They were powerful, their elite family making decisions that could shake the galaxy's power structures. And they didn't take kindly to anyone outside their race. The creature's eyes suddenly opened, brilliant amber against the blackness of its pupils. It hissed, revealing sharp, crystalline teeth, and before Alex could react, its paw swiped toward his throat with unnerving speed. Alex jerked back just in time, narrowly avoiding the strike. "I'm trying to help you," he snapped, grabbing a sedative injector. The creature froze, its burning gaze locking onto his face. Something passed between them, an assessment, a brief connection that sent a cold shiver down Alex's spine. Then, surprisingly, it lowered its paw and relaxed back onto the table, though its eyes never left his. "Okay, we understand each other," Alex muttered, setting aside the sedative injector. He prepared a painkiller, calculating a dosage that would alleviate its suffering without rendering it unconscious. As he administered the injection, the creature exhaled softly, its body relaxing in what seemed like relief. The scanner's display lit up with a three-dimensional anatomical map that made Alex's mind race. 2 separate circulatory systems. Neurostructure suggesting intelligence far beyond non-sentient species. The most troubling was a fatal wound, a precise strike severing an artery. This wasn't random. Someone had deliberately intended for this being to die slowly. "What happened to you?" Alex whispered, gently wiping the coagulated blood from its fur. The creature's eyes fluttered, then fixed on him once again, full of an intensity that was almost human. Slowly, its paw stretched out, claws retracting. Alex hesitated, but gently placed his fingers on the creature's pad. A jolt shot through his arm, an electric surge of emotion and thoughts that couldn't possibly have been his. Danger, pursuit, betrayal. Alex yanked his hand away, heart hammering. What was that? Before he could process the experience, the station's emergency alarms blared to life. "Attention all personnel." A stern voice echoed through the station's intercom. "The diplomatic vessel Aurora Flame has requested emergency docking privileges." All non-essential personnel are to remain in designated areas. Security clearance has been elevated to Tier 2. The creature's reaction was immediate. Its ears flattened, pupils dilating with sheer panic. That ship is connected to your injuries, isn't it? Alex murmured, leaning closer. The creature seemed to understand. It struggled to rise but collapsed back with a low, pained hiss. Alex's communicator buzzed. Dr. Riven, report to Docking Bay 3. The voice of Director Kieran called out. Bring your emergency medical kit. We have a diplomatic situation requiring your expertise. Alex glanced at the creature, whose eyes now seemed to plead with him. In that moment, Alex made a decision that would change everything. Secure recovery chamber. Authorization Ribbon Alpha 7. Alex ordered computer, locking the chamber's doors as he carefully transferred the creature inside. I'll be back. Whatever's happening, I won't let them find you. As the door slid shut behind him, Alex couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that he just stepped into a situation far more dangerous than tending to a wounded creature. No one in the galaxy, especially the Altheris, sent diplomatic vessels to a station like Pither without a very good reason. Alex muted the comms, his hands moving quickly over the console as the medical transport veered away from Station Pither. His destination, the THRYX Nebula, a dark patch of space beyond the influence of the Lumian Empire. It was the only place where he could lay low, at least until he figured out what was truly happening and why this strange creature was so significant. A soft trill echoed from the medical bay, pulling his attention back. Vex had stirred, her luminous eyes wide open, fixed on him. I hope you realize I've just thrown away my career, my reputation, and possibly my freedom, Alex muttered, engaging the autopilot before checking the creature's vitals. All for an alien cat, who I know nothing about. Vex made an annoyed sound, as if offended by the casual dismissal, before extending her paw toward him in a slow, deliberate motion. Alex hesitated, then placed his fingers on her pad. That electric surge returned, but this time he didn't pull away. A rush of impressions filled his mind. No words, just concepts. Gratitude, alliance, caution. You're trying to communicate, Alex whispered, astonished. You're telepathic. Vex blinked slowly, as if confirming his realization. Who are you running from? Alex asked. What happened to you? Vex's eyes narrowed in thought, and more impressions came. Throne. Betrayal. Pursuit. Before Alex could ask more questions, the proximity alarms blared. Another vessel had appeared on their sensors, larger, faster, and heading straight toward them. That was fast, Alex muttered, returning to the controls. Either your friends are incredibly resourceful, or I'm much worse at escaping than I thought. The pursuing ship closed in on them, its silhouette becoming sharper as it approached. Alex's blood ran cold when he saw the sleek, aggressive design of a Lumian royal cruiser. Not the diplomatic vessel from before, but something much more refined and lethal. Warning, targeting systems locked, the ship's computer announced in a calm voice. Imminent weapons discharge detected. They're going to fire on a medical transport? Alex exclaimed, disbelief lacing his words. That violates every interstellar convention. The response came in the form of a searing energy beam that sliced past them, narrowly missing their port side. A warning shot. Medical Transport Epsilon 77. This is the Lumian cruiser Swift Justice. A cold voice echoed through their comms. Power down immediately and prepare to be boarded. This is your final warning. Alex's mind raced, running through their options, none of which were good. The transport wasn't designed for combat or high-speed evasion. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and quickly running out of space. A light touch on his arm made him jump. Vex had somehow managed to make her way to the cockpit, despite her injuries. Now, she sat beside him, her piercing gaze fixed on the approaching ship. You wouldn't happen to have any brilliant escape plans, would you? Alex asked, half joking. To his surprise, Vex leaned forward and pressed a sequence of controls with calm precision. The navigation system recalculated, highlighting a nearby asteroid field dense with metallic or an area that could confuse the sensors. That might work, Alex breathed. He took manual control, pushing the transport's engines beyond safe limits and diving toward the asteroid field. Another beam shot past them, where they had been just seconds earlier. This is either the smartest or the stupidest thing I've ever done, Alex muttered as they plunged into a maze of rocks. Probably the latter. Vex made a noise that Alex could have sworn resembled a laugh. 3 days later, Alex guided the battered medical transport into the shadowed docking bay of Haven's Edge, a hidden settlement carved into a massive asteroid on the fringe of known space. The journey had been brutal. They had lost the pursuing cruiser in the asteroid field, but the ship had taken enough damage to leave their life support systems struggling to maintain functionality. "Don't get too excited," Alex told Vex as he powered down the transport's engines. Haven's Edge isn't exactly a luxury resort. It's a haven for deserters, outlaws, and anyone who needs to avoid the authorities. Vex, fully recovered from her injuries and moving with fluid grace, observed the bustling docking bay through the viewport with clear interest. During the journey, Alex had sifted through everything he could find about the Lumian court and their royal companions. The information was fragmented, contradictory, but one thing was clear. The royal companions were not pets. They were genetically intertwined with their Lumian masters, sharing a deep psychic bond, a bond that made harming one of them a grave offense against the royal family itself. "I still don't get it," Alex muttered as he prepared to disembark. "If you're a royal companion, shouldn't they be trying to bring you back to your owner?" Vex's expression shifted, her ears flattening, eyes narrowing with something like distress. "Unless your owner is the problem," Alex realized, the pieces falling into place. "Are you running from the one you're bonded to?" Vex's eyes widened, and she hissed sharply, clearly upset by the suggestion. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Alex started to apologize, but before he could finish, the ship's hatch slammed shut with a loud mechanical lock. Proximity alarms wailed through the cabin. Alex spun to the external cameras and saw a squad of armed figures, all wearing the telltale insignia of Astralee's forces, surrounding the vessel. "Well, we lasted 3 whole days," Alex said with resigned amusement. "I was hoping for at least a week." The comm system suddenly crackled, and a voice came through on Haven's Edge's internal frequency, not the military channel he'd expected. "Medical Transport Epsilon 17. This is Captain Kaidal, the Shadow Pursuer. We mean you no harm. We've come for the Duchess's companion." Alex and Vex exchanged confused looks. "If you're not here to drag us back to Lumia Prime," Alex called out, "then why are you pointing weapons at my ship?" "Precaution," came the response. "Too many of our allies have been betrayed recently. Open your hatch, Dr. Riven. There's someone here who very much wants to meet you." Alex hesitated for a moment, then looked at Vex, whose posture had changed completely. Her ears were forward, her body alert, her eyes bright with what could only be described as hope. "You know these people?" Alex asked. Vex chirped in affirmation, her paw reaching for the hatch controls. "I hope your judgment is better than mine," Alex muttered, overriding the lockdown. The hatch hissed open, revealing the armed squad. All Astralees, but their armor bore different markings than the ones who had searched Outpost Zeta. They formed a protective corridor, allowing a figure to step forward from their midst. Alex's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight of her. She moved with an elegance that was undeniable, her fur a stunning pattern of iridescent blue streaks on alabaster white, just like Vex. Her eyes, topaz against black, locked onto Vex, and the connection between them was instant. "Vex!" the figure breathed, dropping to one knee as the creature bounded forward to meet her. Their reunion was something beyond words. Vex pressed her forehead against hers, and Alex could almost feel the psychic connection pulsing between them. The Duchess, Vex's royal counterpart, embraced the creature, murmuring in a language Alex's translator couldn't process. Finally, she looked up, her eyes focusing on him with an intensity that made him straighten involuntarily. "Dr. Alex Riven," she said, her voice soft but laced with undeniable authority. "I am Duchess Aline of the Lumian Court. You saved my heart's other half. I am forever in your debt." Alex absorbed the information with remarkable calm. "I suspected as much when they fired on a medical transport," he replied, his voice steady. "But I didn't exactly have a choice. I couldn't just let them take Vex." "Why?" Duchess Aline asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "You had no stake in our politics." Surrendering Vex would have guaranteed you rewards, protection, and advancement. Alex paused to consider the question. Because it would have been wrong, he answered simply. Vex was injured, terrified, and clearly running for his life. Everything in me as a doctor, maybe even as a person, told me to protect him. Something in Celine's expression softened, her eyes narrowing in thought. Remarkable, she murmured. In my court, such straightforward decency is vanishingly rare. What happens now? Alex asked, turning the conversation toward their next steps. Thorn believes I am isolated in mourning, and Vex is dead, Celine replied. That gives us an advantage, temporarily. Alex raised an eyebrow. Then we're not going to confront him directly? Not if we can help it, Celine confirmed, her voice hardening. Thorn controls the Lumian military, the intelligence networks, and has likely installed his supporters throughout the government. My loyal followers are few, but they are skilled. A direct confrontation would fail. Then don't confront him directly, Alex suggested. Use your presumed isolation as cover while you gather strength and gather intelligence. Celine studied him, a flicker of new interest in her eyes. You have a strategic mind for a veterinarian, she commented with a faint smile. Alex shrugged. I grew up on a contested border colony. You learn to think tactically when pirate raids are a seasonal occurrence. Then perhaps you can help us further, Celine said, surprising both Alex and Captain Kaida, who had been quietly standing by the door. Your outsider perspective might reveal options we've overlooked. Kaida hesitated, then spoke up. While Dr. Riven's help with Vex has been invaluable, involving a human in Lumian matters is exactly what Thorn would never anticipate. Celine cut him off. His xenophobia is predictable and exploitable. Alex raised his eyebrows. Are you offering me a job, Your Grace? I'm offering you sanctuary, Celine corrected. Thorn's agents will never stop hunting you. With us, at least you have protection and purpose. Alex glanced over at Vex, who watched him with calm, expectant eyes, and then back at Celine. Something passed between them, an unspoken connection not unlike the one he'd felt with Vex, but distinctly different. I accept, he said finally, after a long pause. On one condition. Celine tilted her head, clearly unaccustomed to conditions being attached to her offers. And what condition would that be? That you stop calling me Dr. Riven, Alex replied with the ghost of a smile. If we're planning a counter-coup together, you might as well use my name. A smile curved Celine's lips, her delicate fangs peeking out slightly. Very well, Alex. The strategy sessions aboard the Shadow Pursuer stretched from hours into days as they traveled through unmonitored space toward a rendezvous with their remaining resistance forces. Alex found himself becoming increasingly central to their planning. His outsider perspective proved invaluable, revealing strategic insights that the Lumian elite had overlooked. Thorn's strength lies in his military, Alex pointed out during one heated debate. But his weakness is legitimacy. The Lumian people are deeply traditional. They may accept his regency for now, but they revere their duchess. A public appearance would force his hand. Captain Kaida agreed. But the moment your grace emerges from isolation, you become a target. Not if we control the circumstances of my return, Celine replied thoughtfully, her voice calm but resolute. Alex, you mentioned biological warfare countermeasures in your medical training. Could such approaches be adapted to our situation? Alex frowned as he considered. You're thinking of creating a crisis that only you can resolve, something that would necessitate your public return without giving Thorn the opportunity to strike. Precisely, Celine said, her eyes gleaming with approval. As they worked together, Alex found himself increasingly drawn to the young Duchess. Her strategic mind was formidable, her devotion to her people genuine, and her willingness to risk everything for justice rare among the rulers he had encountered. In turn, she seemed fascinated by his practical approach to problems and his unwavering ethical compass. Their interactions grew less formal, particularly during the quiet hours when most of the crew rested. They would share stories of their vastly different upbringings. Celine had been raised in the opulent isolation of the Lumian court, trained from birth for leadership. Alex, on the other hand, had grown up on a hardscrabble colony world where survival depended on community and adaptability. I was meant to study xenobiology, Celine admitted one night, her voice low as Vex dozed between them. Not to govern an empire before my 30th year. Yet here you are, Alex replied, a wry smile touching his lips, crossing the quadrant Persily for your companion, when most rulers would have dispatched agents. Vex is not merely a companion, she said fiercely, her eyes narrowing as she spoke. He is my heart beyond my body. I could no more abandon him than cease breathing. Her passion ignited something deep in Alex's chest. Admiration, intertwined with dangerous warmth he dared not name. Each accidental brush of their hands sent electricity racing through him, each shared glance lingering a heartbeat longer than necessary. On the 7th night of their journey, Alex found himself alone with Celine in the ship's observation dome. The vast starfield spread above them, like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Your plan is dangerous, Alex said quietly, referring to the strategy they had finalized earlier that day. If anything goes wrong, all worthy endeavors carry risk, Celine interrupted, moving to stand beside him. But I believe this will succeed, largely thanks to your insights. Alex turned to face her, suddenly aware of how close they were. I'm still not convinced you should be the one to infiltrate the palace. The danger is mine to face. Celine stood firm. A ruler who won't risk herself for her people has no business ruling. The starlight caught in the azure highlights of her alabaster fur, and Alex found himself mesmerized by the play of light across her features. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of boundaries crossed and protocols abandoned. Alex, she said softly, his name a gentle purr in her exotic accent. In my culture, when someone saves a royal companion, they become forever linked to the royal house. Is that your way of saying I'll never be rid of you? Alex asked, surprise making him more direct than he'd intended. A smile curved Celine's lips, revealing the delicate points of her fangs. Is that a prospect you find displeasing? No, Alex admitted, the simple truth slipping out before he could consider its implications. Not at all. Her eyes widened slightly, as if his answer had surprised her. Then, with a deliberate slowness that made his heart race, she stepped closer. In my court, she murmured. Such honesty would be considered either naive or dangerously bold. Which do you consider it? Refreshing, Alex said, not backing away. Celine closed the remaining distance between them. Their first kiss was tentative, a careful exploration of alien territory. Her lips were softer than he expected, the points of her fangs a delicate danger against his tongue. She tasted of spices he couldn't name, her purr vibrating through their connected bodies. When they finally separated, breathless and startled by their own actions, the universe seemed to have shifted on its axis. That was, Alex began, unprecedented. Celine finished, looking dazed. The daughter of the Lumian court and a human veterinarian, Alex said, a touch of disbelief in his voice. Is it that shocking? Shocking. Forbidden. And absolutely what I want, she said with characteristic decisiveness. But Alex, you should understand this complicates everything. Interspecies relationships exist in the outer systems, Alex said dryly. But among royalty, I'm guessing it's not exactly encouraged? It would be considered scandalous at best, she confirmed. Treasonous at worst. A useful weapon for Thorn to wield against you, Alex noted. Then we'll be discreet, Celine said, touching his face gently. At least until your throne is secure. I think we've already established I'm not particularly good at running, Alex said with a smile. Besides, I'm already a fugitive from Lumian justice. Might as well add royal consort to my list of crimes. Her answering laugh was wild, sending shivers down his spine. She drew him back to her, and Alex went willingly, leaving caution behind in the vast darkness of space that surrounded them. Alex surveyed the scene before him, his heart pounding with a familiar adrenaline rush. The palace was in chaos, but it was a controlled chaos, one that was rapidly unfolding in their favor. The Lumian region had allowed a deadly outbreak to spread, prioritizing military security over public health. That oversight would be one of the many things they could use against him. First priority is assessing containment protocols, Alex called to the harried medical staff, his voice altered by his helmet's vocoder. We need access to environmental systems and population distribution data. The senior physician, an Astralese female with graying fur, hesitated. Those systems are under military control now, by Regent Thorne's orders. Unacceptable, Celine stated, her voice carrying the weight of her royal command, even through the disguise she wore. Authority protocols supersede local governance during Class 3 outbreaks. Or would the Regent prefer we declare a sector-wide emergency? The physician's ears flattened in submission. I'll arrange access within the hour. With access to the necessary data, they quickly mapped the palace's security systems and identified the locations of loyal staff who had survived Thorne's purges. As they moved toward the central environmental control hub, Alex felt the familiar tension creeping into his muscles, the heightened awareness that came with mortal danger. Pirate raids had taught him to act fast and think even faster. "Security checkpoint ahead," he warned, noting the armed guard station at the entrance. They were equipped with military-grade weapons, but Celine's posture shifted subtly, signaling that they would be moving into action. "Follow my lead," she whispered. She suddenly stumbled forward, her breathing growing labored. Alex rushed to her side, calling out an alarm. "Medical emergency. Containment breach." The guards, instinctively stepping back, were more concerned with the potential contagion than their training. Alex seized the opportunity to deploy a localized nerve agent, carefully calibrated to knock them unconscious without causing permanent harm. Once inside the control room, they worked with practiced efficiency. Celine overrode security protocols, while Alex manipulated the modified atmospheric controls, preparing to trigger Captain Kaida's signal. Suddenly, a mechanical voice rang through the facility. "Intruders in environmental control. Security lockdown initiated. We've been compromised." Celine snarled, her fingers flying over the control panel. Thorne must have upgraded the biometric sensors. As Alex adjusted the temperature settings to trigger the necessary diversion, the first explosion rocked the palace, signaling that their allies had launched the assault early, an adaptation of their plan rather than its abandonment. "We need to reach the Grand Council chamber," Celine said, discarding her cumbersome disguise. "With evidence of Thorne's treason, I can invoke the ancient right of challenge." The palace corridors were chaotic, filled with the sounds of clashing loyalists and Thorne's forces. They fought their way through, the sounds of battle growing closer as they neared their destination. When they reached the council chamber, they found Captain Kaida wounded but standing guard. A circle of fallen enemies surrounded her position. "Thorne's inside with the remaining council members," she reported, blood matting her dark fur. "He's threatening executions if the rebellion isn't crushed immediately." Celine's eyes met Alex's. A silent communication passed between them, the culmination of their shared danger and their growing, intimate understanding. "I'll create a distraction if the service in trance," Alex said, checking the remaining equipment in his pack. "You challenge him directly. As tradition demands, he'll kill you." Celine growled, her claws extending involuntarily. "I don't need you to protect me." Alex smiled grimly. "He'll try." Before she could protest further, he kissed her fiercely, heedless of Kaida's startled expression, and then disappeared down a side corridor. The service entrance to the council chamber was lightly guarded, a tactical error Alex had anticipated. Using the last of his nerve agent, he neutralized the guards and accessed the environmental controls for the chamber. He adjusted the atmosphere, creating a diversion that wouldn't harm anyone inside but would provide the perfect cover for their next move. As the mixture reached its target concentration, Alex activated the chamber's emergency ventilation system. A cascade of smoke and debris filled the room, and amid the confusion, he slipped inside, positioning himself among the panicked counselors. Thorne stood at the ceremonial platform, his ornate regalia failing to mask the madness in his eyes. "The traitor returns," he snarled as Celine entered the main doors, Captain Kaida at her side. "Come to die with your remaining supporters, cousin?" "I come to reclaim what is mine by right of blood and law," Celine replied, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. Thorne's laugh was hollow. "Challenge you? Bring a wounded captain and expect to overthrow me? My forces control the capital." "Not anymore," Kaida stated, activating a holographic display, showing Thorne's mercenaries surrendering across the palace. "Your mercenaries abandon you as we speak." Thorne's composure shattered, and with a feral scream, he lunged at Selene, blades flashing toward her throat. She sidestepped with fluid grace, but then Thorne's second weapon, a neural disruptor, appeared in his hand, aimed at her heart. Alex moved without thinking. Years of precision medical work had honed his aim. With a sharp flick of his wrist, he threw a surgical scalpel, the blade embedding itself in Thorne's wrist. The disruptor discharged harmlessly into the ceiling as Thorne howled in pain. Interference! Thorne shrieked, clutching his wounded arm. An alien intervenes in sacred combat. The challenge is invalid. Not interference, Selene corrected, advancing on her wounded cousin. Alliance. Dr. Morgan acts as my lawful mate, just as Vex does. The striped creature padded into the chamber, taking position beside Alex. The ancient laws make no specification about the species of one's chosen partner, Selene added, her voice cold and authoritative. A stunned murmur ran through the gathered counselors. With calculated precision, Selene disarmed her cousin and forced him to his knees. The council will judge your crimes, she declared, but the people will witness your shame. As royal guards loyal to Selene secured Thorne, Alex stepped forward to stand beside her, no longer hidden, no longer in disguise. His human presence on the ceremonial platform sent a ripple of shock through the assembly. Counselors of Lumia, Selene announced, her voice steady and clear. I present to you Dr. Alex Riven, the man who saved your rightful ruler, who helped devise the strategy that liberated our capital, and who stands as living proof that our future lies in cooperation, not isolation. One by one, the counselors bowed their heads in a silent gesture of respect, and Alex stood beside Selene, the unlikely partnership between them now a symbol of the transformation to come. 6 months later, Alex stood on the private balcony of the royal quarters, gazing out at the 3 moons rising over Lumia Prime's crystalline landscape. Behind him, he could hear Selene concluding a diplomatic call, her voice firm but diplomatic as she negotiated trade terms with a neighboring system. Vex lounged on the balcony's edge, his topaz eyes half closed in contentment. The creature had become Alex's constant companion during the tumultuous months of transition, a living bridge between the human doctor and the Lumian court that still regarded him with a mixture of fascination and suspicion. Another successful negotiation? Alex asked as Selene joined him, her royal regalia discarded for a simple evening robe. The Arcturus Confederation has agreed to our terms, she confirmed, satisfaction evident in her voice. The first in-species trade agreement in Lumian history that doesn't involve exploitation or coercion. Alex smiled. Your grandfather will be apoplectic. Undoubtedly, Selene agreed, leaning against him as they gazed at the moons. But the council can't argue with the results. Our economy is strengthening, our diplomatic standing is improving, and public approval ratings are at historic highs. Alex wrapped an arm around her, still marveling at how natural their closeness had become. Despite their physiological differences, despite the opposition, which though vocal was diminishing, Selene's quiet strength was a constant source of comfort. Change is never easy, she said softly, especially for a society as tradition-bound as ours. But when people see tangible benefits... Their peaceful moment was interrupted by a chime from a communications panel. Captain Kaida, now promoted to commander of the Royal Security Forces. Selene sighed, her ears flattening slightly in annoyance. Duty calls. Always does, Alex replied, his voice philosophical. Go. I'll be here when you're finished. She turned to face him, those remarkable eyes searching his. Does it bother you, living in the shadows of court politics? Always adjacent to power, but never fully acknowledged. Alex considered the question carefully. His position was unique, often awkward. Officially, Selene's xenobiology advisor, unofficially her consort. Their relationship remained the subject of court gossip and occasional diplomatic incidents. Sometimes, he admitted honestly, but I didn't fall in love with the Duchess of Lumia. I fell in love with Selene, the woman who crossed a quadrant for her companion, who fought to reclaim her throne, and who's reshaping her society despite centuries of tradition. Selene's expression softened. After everything we've been through, I sometimes fear you'll grow tired of the complications and return to a simpler life. Not a chance, Alex said, touching the soft fur between her ears. Though I do miss treating actual animals occasionally. Court politics makes veterinary emergencies seem straightforward by comparison. Her laugh was wild, the same wildness he had first fallen in love with. Perhaps we can arrange for you to establish a royal veterinary service. The nobility's companions could use proper medical care from someone who understands their unique needs. That, Alex said, sounds like a perfect compromise. The communicator chimed again, more insistently this time. Go, Alex repeated, grinning. Save the Empire. I'll be waiting. Celine pressed her forehead against his, a Lumian gesture of deepest intimacy, before turning to answer the call, her royal dignity settling over her like a cloak. Alex returned his gaze to the moons, Vex purring contentedly beside him. His life had transformed beyond recognition in the span of a year, from isolated outpost veterinarian to the consort of one of the most powerful rulers in the quadrant. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with political intrigue and cultural obstacles, but he faced it without regret. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would confront them together, the unlikely veterinarian and his duchess, rewriting the future of two worlds. The following months brought both victories and struggles for Celine and Alex. With the Lumian court slowly embracing change, Celine's grip on the throne solidified, but the challenges were far from over. As she worked to reshape her kingdom into one based on cooperation rather than isolation, Celine often found herself facing the harsh realities of ingrained traditions and power dynamics that resisted the tides of reform. Alex, on the other hand, found himself becoming an unexpected symbol of unity between their worlds. As the Duchess's consort, he was seen as a living testament to the possibility of peace between the human colonies and the Lumian Empire. Yet, despite his growing influence, he remained at odds with certain factions of court. Those who saw his presence as a symbol of the Empire's weakness, a stain upon its regal history. The humans, too, began to notice the change. Some supported the idea of closer relations with the Lumian court, while others remained wary, preferring isolationist policies that had defined human space for generations. Alex could see both sides, but his position was clear. To prevent war, they would need to unite, humans, Lumians, and all those who had suffered under the old ways. Their next mission was to secure an agreement with the Arcturus Confederation, a powerful and influential system on the edge of human-controlled space. It was critical for Celine's new approach, but it required navigating a delicate web of diplomacy that tested every limit of Alex's patience. One evening, as the Shadow Pursuer traveled through hyperspace toward the Confederation's capital, Celine and Alex stood on the observation deck, watching the swirling nebulae outside. A silence passed between them, comfortable yet full of unspoken thoughts. "You're quiet tonight," Celine said softly, her voice tinged with curiosity. "I'm just thinking about everything," Alex replied, his eyes never leaving the swirling clouds of space. This alliance, the pressure it puts on you, on both of us. I'm not used to this much attention. Celine, we've come so far, and yet we're still so far from what we want. Some days I feel the same way, she confessed, standing beside him. It's not easy, trying to rebuild something that was meant to last forever. The old powers are still fighting. And no matter how much I change, no matter what I do, it will never be enough for some. Alex turned to face her, his expression softening. You've changed the course of history already. No one will ever forget what you've done. Celine, it's just the beginning. Sometimes change doesn't look the way we expect it to. You're doing something no one has ever dared. Celine met his gaze with a deep intensity. And you're the reason I'm doing it, she whispered. Without you, without your insight, this wouldn't have been possible. We've built this together. The two stood in quiet contemplation, the weight of their journey settling over them. The stars beyond the ship's windows seemed distant, but in their hearts, there was a shared sense of purpose that united them in a way words could not capture. The diplomatic talks with the Arcturus Confederation began under tense circumstances. The Confederation was a proud, ancient faction of spacefaring civilizations, a conglomerate of different species united under a single banner. However, their policies often leaned toward conservatism, and many of their leaders viewed the Lumian Empire with suspicion. Selene had invited Alex to the table for his unique perspective, hoping his outsider's view would bring fresh insights. The first few meetings were rocky. The Arcturus representatives were cordial, but clearly skeptical of Selene's intentions. Their distrust of Lumian rule ran deep, and even the slightest hint of weakness from Selene's side would give them leverage. For 3 long days, the two sides locked horns. Selene's strategy was firm, yet graceful, negotiating on terms of peace, trade, and cultural exchange. But Alex could sense that there was something the Confederation wasn't telling them, an unspoken fear that lingered in their negotiations. On the 4th day, as the talks reached a critical point, one of the Arcturus delegates, a tall, angular being named Kel, stood and made a bold statement. You think that you can simply enter our space and bring your royal court with you, just as if everything can be settled by words alone? Tkel's voice was sharp, his eyes narrowed with disdain. You bring a human as your advisor, your consort, and expect us to believe that your empire is now a symbol of peace? Selene remained calm, her regal composure not betraying any sign of the sting Tkel's words had caused. Alex, however, could feel the tension building within her. He stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. Perhaps it's not about what you expect, but what you need, he said. What we all need. The Lumian Empire, despite its history, is changing. I've seen it firsthand. There are those within the Empire who are working towards something better, something worth striving for. And that's why I'm here, not as a pawn or a consort, but as someone who believes in the possibility of cooperation. Tkel hesitated, his eyes flicking to Selene before settling back on Alex. And you believe your people are ready for that? He asked, his tone softened by the slight hesitation. Alex nodded. I do. The room was silent for a moment as the weight of his words settled over the delegates. Slowly, Selene stood, her eyes locking with Tkel's. I am not here to erase the past, she said softly, but to build a future that reflects the needs of all species, not just my own. I understand the hesitation, the fear of what's to come, but trust in one thing. If we do this together, we will rise stronger than we've ever been. For the first time in the entire negotiation, the Arcturus delegates exchanged uncertain glances. The room was still, the air thick with anticipation. Then, to Alex's surprise, Tkel gave a slight nod. We will consider your offer, he said, his voice lower now, almost respectful. The negotiation stretched on for several more hours, but by the end of the day, a breakthrough had been made. The Confederation agreed to a preliminary trade agreement, though they insisted on reviewing it further. But it was a victory nonetheless, a victory that was secured not through force, but through trust. As the ship made its way back to Lumia Prime, Alex and Selene stood together in the observation deck again, the weight of their success settling over them. I can't believe we did it, Alex said, his voice low. The Arcturus Confederation. That's huge. Selene leaned against him, her eyes lost in the endless stars outside. It's a start, but there's still so much to do. Alex smiled, squeezing her hand. And we'll do it together. They stood there, watching the stars shift in the distance, a quiet understanding between them. Though they had faced tremendous challenges, both within and outside their empire, they had found something much stronger, each other. And together, they would continue to fight for the future of their worlds, no matter what came next. As the ship neared Lumia Prime, Alex felt a sense of finality, a realization that everything they had worked for was about to take shape. The battle was far from over, but the first steps toward a unified future had been taken. And in that moment, standing beside the Duchess of Lumia, Alex knew that they were rewriting history, not just for their worlds, but for their people. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as allies, as partners, and as something more. The days following their return to Lumia Prime were a whirlwind of political maneuvering, strategic alliances, and the slow but steady rebuilding of society that had been fractured for so long. Selene's reign, now solidified by the defeat of Thorn and the diplomatic success with the Arcturus Confederation, was marked by a profound sense of change. But it was not the kind of change that happened quickly or without resistance. Every step forward was met with challenges. Old loyalties were broken, new enemies emerged, and the weight of history seemed heavy on their shoulders. But through it all, Celine was resolute. Her vision for a more inclusive and cooperative empire began to take root, even in the most traditional corners of her world. And in this new era, Alex found himself more than just a consort to the Duchess of Lumia. He was a symbol of what was possible when two worlds dare to dream together. The palace halls that had once felt like a prison to him now felt like a place of purpose. The ancient stones that lined the corridors, cold and imposing, were no longer barriers between him and the people of Lumia. Instead, they served as reminders of the strength of the Empire and its capacity for reinvention. Each council meeting, each diplomatic session, brought with it new opportunities to shape a future they had once only imagined. But as much as he felt a sense of fulfillment, Alex knew the path ahead would never be easy. The challenges were always more complex than they appeared at first glance. Each success uncovered more difficult questions, more intricacies within the Empire's tangled web of politics. How would they balance the needs of the Lumian court with the demands of their growing relationships with the human colonies? What would the future hold for the species that were still not fully represented in the Alliance? Despite the weight of these uncertainties, one thing was clear to Alex. The work they were doing was worth it. The people of Lumia, once divided by centuries of isolation and xenophobia, were beginning to see the benefits of unity. Celine's influence, though not without its detractors, was transforming the royal court into something that could no longer be ignored. In the quiet moments, when the weight of their shared mission pressed down on them, Alex often found himself looking at Celine and Vex, now both more than just as allies, but as family. The creature who had once been nothing more than an injured animal now stood proudly by Celine's side, a living symbol of their journey together. Vex had become an essential part of their new world, a bridge between the humans and the Lumians, a symbol of the cooperation that had once seemed impossible. It was in those rare moments of peace that Alex realized how far he had come. From a simple veterinarian on a forgotten outpost to the consort of a powerful ruler, his life had transformed in ways he never could have imagined. But the true nature of that transformation was not in the titles he now held or the political power he had acquired. It was in the way he had learned to understand, respect, and ultimately love a people so different from his own. It was in his growing admiration for Celine and her unyielding commitment to her people, no matter the personal cost. Yet, even as they moved forward, the future remained uncertain. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers both known and unknown, and their enemies, both old and new, were waiting in the shadows. As Celine took her seat on the throne and began to enact the reforms that would reshape her world, there were whispers among her court about what would come next. Would the Lumian Empire embrace this new order, or would it resist a change that seemed inevitable? And more importantly, what role would Alex play in all of this? Was he simply a pawn in Celine's grand vision, or was he, too, destined to help shape the future of their worlds? These questions hung in the air like distant stars, always just out of reach, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. But Alex no longer feared the uncertainty. The lessons he had learned from Celine, from the people of Lumia, had taught him that true change never came from avoiding the unknown. It came from facing it head-on, with courage, with unity, and with a commitment to something greater than oneself. In the grand chamber of the royal palace, Celine addressed the council once again. Her voice, strong and clear, rang out through the room as she spoke of new alliances, new trade agreements, and new plans for the future. As she outlined her vision, Alex stood beside her, no longer just a figurehead or a symbol. He was an active participant in the discussions, offering his own insights, questioning assumptions, and shaping the policies that would determine the course of the empire. When Celine finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. The council, once fractured and wary of her, now listened with respect and even admiration. Alex could feel the shift in the air, a shift that had taken months to build, but that now seemed undeniable. The empire was changing, and they were at the center of it. As the council meeting drew to a close, Alex stepped outside with Celine, his heart swelling with pride. They had come so far, and yet there was still so much more to do. The road ahead was long, and the obstacles they faced were far from over. But together, they had built something worth fighting for, something that transcended politics, that transcended power. "I never thought it would be like this," Alex said, his voice quiet as he watched the stars glittering above them. Celine turned to him, a smile tugging at her lips. "No one did," she replied softly. "But we're making it happen, Alex. Together." And as they stood side by side, watching the stars stretch out before them, Alex knew that no matter what lay ahead, they would face it as a team. The unlikely partnership between a human veterinarian and the Duchess of Lumia was no longer just a political statement. It was a testament to the power of unity, the strength of shared vision, and the undeniable force of love. The future, whatever it held, would be shaped by their hands. Together,